Welcome to Hard Talk. In 1998, you were Deputy Prime Minister. You were then prisoner for 6 years, held in solitary confinement. Do you now want to make up for lost time, go back to Malaysia and become Prime Minister?
I'm spending my time reading, writing, lecturing, and keeping in touch with the developments in Malaysia.
Preparing?
In a way, yes, but we'll see the developments, whether the reforms are meaningful or not.
Preparing for what? Preparing for government, for leadership?
We'll have to continue to discuss with our friends and supporters in Malaysia, because...
But to be clear, it is your ambition.
Well, I don't preclude that entirely, but to say that I'm focused on that also is not right, because I have been focusing a lot in terms of initiating the dialogue between Islam and the West, and particularly the United States.
But we will get to that. But Malaysians do want to know whether you still have that burning political ambition, which you clearly had before.
I did, no denying about that, but right now my focus has been both domestic and international, and to a large extent throughout until the end of the year will be international.
What went wrong for you, Anwar Ibrahim? Because you were the anointed one. You were seen almost as the son to Dr. Mahathir in political terms. He was the father figure to you. Suddenly, everything went wrong.
It's not that sudden, because the tensions were brewing up for years. I was instrumental in making the necessary changes in the anti-corruption laws, which was not liked or tolerated by the leadership and many of my colleagues in the cabinet. I did express myself publicly about the issue of the independence of the judiciary and the need to reform.
Well, let's go through your political career, because you had a very long one. You joined the United Malays National Organisation, which I think we're going to call UMNO throughout this interview. Yes. You joined them 16 years before imprisonment. You were then a minister from 1983. First, I believe you were agriculture. By 1993, you were finance minister. And then, in 1996, you became Deputy Prime Minister. This is a long track record. If you're telling me that over all of that time you were making protests about corruption, how come you kept getting promoted?
No, the fact that the corruption issue came up much later. The issue
but you did tell me that you were having problems with Dr. Mahathir over a long period.
For a few years before.
But how come he kept promoting you then?
I wasn't promoted after 93. I was there as Deputy Prime Minister, elected by the party. I was not appointed by him.
Are you denying that you were one of his closest associates, that many people believed that you were the one he was grooming for succession?
Yeah, I was close to him, and we worked rather well initially, until I make my position clear on the issues of reform and anti-corruption drive.
So let's be clear about this. What happened? When did you first voice disapproval to Dr. Mahathir of the way the government was being run?
Not much disapproval, rather than making the necessary adjustments of policy changes or reorientation in terms of having effective laws against corruption, having to respect the institutions of civil society, and managing the economy in a more responsible...
But that doesn't sound like disapproval, so it wasn't disapproval.
Well, this was not supported. This was not endorsed by the leadership.
But my point is, if you are telling me that you fell out with Dr. Mahathir because you were flagging up corruption and protesting about it, what exactly did you say to him? That's what we need to know.
Well, I said we need to act because there are a lot of reports that involve and the cabinet ministers.
Well, you were finance minister.
Yes.
It's not a question of reports. What did you know was going on, and what did you tell him was going on that you didn't like?
The anti-corruption agency reported to me of their frustration not able to prefer charges against ministers in the government. I had to bring up to his attention. I said, this is not tenable anymore.
Well, his ministers, what about him himself?
Well, there were allegations against him, but...
Did you put them to him? Did you ask him?
I did not ask him personally at that time until towards the later part, when this was obvious, when this was reported to me. I would not take it up based on hearsay evidence. I would only take it up when this is brought to me by the relevant authorities, including the anti-corruption agency.
Let's go back a little time to earlier years, when you were already in the party, a part of the ruling party elite. There were several occasions, particularly in 1987 and 1988, when the government did things which, to many Malaysians, were absolutely unacceptable. I'm thinking, for example, of the arrest of over 100 people in 1987 in a roundup of the opposition, closing down of newspapers. Then in 1988, the summary removal of the leading figure in the Malaysian judiciary. Now, one Deputy Prime Minister resigned over the latter. You did nothing.
No, I did. It is quite obvious the party leadership was aware.
What did you do?
In 1987, I went up to Dr. Mahathir, appealed to him to release those who have been detained, because they were detained on the pretext of creating a tension and division between the racial groups.
But he didn't release them, did he?
He did after some time.
Well, a very long time.
No, some after a few weeks, some after a few months. And of course,
months. Most of them months, and indeed the newspapers that he shut down didn't reopen for many months.
Yes. And we did raise, but within the party.
You say you raised it, you're talking about vague disapproval, but other people chose to resign. For example, one Deputy Prime Minister chose to resign.
Well, the Deputy Prime Minister resigned much earlier, not over this arrest.
He resigned, as I understand it, he resigned over the removal of the head of the judiciary.
No, not specific at that point, because they were having some differences.
But that's when he actually tendered his resignation.
No. I think the removal of the judiciary was after he resigned, if I'm not mistaken.
But my point through all of this is that you are now here, posing as a man who speaks about clean government in Malaysia. Yes. But your hands are dirty. Your hands have been dirtied by 16 years at the top of the Malaysian leadership.
Well, I did not deny the fact that I was part of the system. In fact, publicly, I said I cannot absolve myself entirely from the policies of Dr. Mahathir when he was Prime Minister.
Were you corrupt?
I wasn't, because I
as Finance Minister, you had no friends, no cronies whom you helped out?
I challenged them to provide any evidence to the effect. I challenged them to have an independent commission of inquiry, to adduce any evidence to prove that I did accept.